Just a couple days ago, The Boys Season 2 came to a brutal finale, so let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I started this channel because I was driving everyone around me crazy talking about movies and TV way too much. If you can relate, you're probably in the right place, and consider clicking that subscribe button. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your take on The Boys Season 2. This is a spoiler review, so everyone has already been warned. Feel free to spoil away down below in the comment section, and let's get started talking about the good. And easily one of the best things about this shows is the set of character and how they have this intertwining web of complex relationships that makes every interaction interesting. It starts off by having all of these well-rounded characters where even when you have Homelander, who's one of the creepiest and most despicable characters on television right now, he's also written in a way that he can be charismatic, charming, and funny in one instance, and then you hate him in the next, and then they at times create scenarios where you actually feel bad for this monster because you understand what turned him into this thing, and that he is essentially a child with the powers of a god on this planet who's put up on a pedestal and behaves like a child in that situation. In and of itself, Homelander is an interesting and captivating character, but then what the show does is intertwine the relationships of the characters in ways that just add conflict and tension on top of already captivating characters. So who is the mother of Homelander's son? It's Butcher's wife, intertwining the hero and the villain in ways that every time you're in some of these scenes, you just have this gut-wrenching feeling. You just feel the intensity of like, oh, this is a bad situation, because Butcher's ultimate motivation is to get his wife back, which cannot easily happen in this scenario. And then she is now tied to a child that Butcher is going to hate because of who he is, who is associated with, and what he represents. And because of this web, when Butcher achieves what he's been trying to do for the first season and a half, he finds his wife. He's unable to actually rescue her because she won't leave. And then as the season goes forward, we get to the end of it, and we find out the reason that she can't leave is because she knows that Butcher was going to ditch the kid. We get to the finale of the season, and it comes to a point in time where we get to a moment where who's the person rescuing the child from Homelander and getting him out of that nightmare where we'd have two of this monster? It's Butcher. Butcher has to overcome all of his anger, hate, biases out of love for his dying and dead wife and the mother of, well, not his child, but of his wife's child. That's compelling. And the reason it works is because you take these two characters that are on polar opposites, intertwine them in ways that have incredible amounts of conflict. So when you get to the end of it, it pays off in a satisfying manner to where you can have an arc for Butcher. You have actual consequences in his wife dying, and it feels earned. And all of the characters have that complexity to them. Queen Maeve has been there as Homelander did these horrible things and sat by and watched it happen, but it's not because she's a Homelander. It's not because she's a monster herself. She's just so in this machine that she's burned out. She's tired, and she's seen all the efforts to try and stop it have failed. Nothing changes. And so she's just kind of thrown in the towel and needs someone else to motivate her to act, to have that opportunity to maybe see a little bit of improvement. That's interesting. None of it is the simple, easy answer. There's always two sides to the character. Along those same lines, the show sticks to its central premise that heroes and villains aren't exactly easy to define, and even heroes do bad things, and even sometimes villains do good things, and a lot of times it's a matter of perspective. So as you go throughout the season, we see the boys themselves, we see Starlight do things that really can't be defended. It's for the greater good, but in the process of trying to stop Vought or stop Homelander, they themselves do villainous things. They themselves kill innocent people in the process or are willing to do so, thus embracing the reality that complex situations don't normally have simple solutions, especially when there's competing values and ethics involved. Whenever you try and do one right thing, it will have consequences that compete with a different value set or ethic. And of course, the other thing this show is great at is its satire and commentary on society. I mean, at its core, it has a whole lot to say about how the people in power very frequently are the causes of the problems that they're solving, and they use their power just to continue to have more power and continue to make more money. And it does this through telling a superhero story that has gnarly violence. It has plenty of comedy, but then it also explores how the media is complicit in all of this stuff because their entire business model is based off of sensational, exciting things happening, and therefore they have no motivation to turn the temperature down on any of this stuff. They want it to get crazier, and this finds a way to use this world and these superheroes to explore a lot of that stuff. It doesn't back down, and it goes after wherever it sees hypocrisy from people in power. One that stood out to me is there's this whole plot line about Maeve being outed as a lesbian by Homelander. And then it turns into this whole subplot about how Vought decides to use this as a marketing opportunity. And so then they write this as a plot line into the new Seven movie that they're making. And they have her selling protein bars for Pride. It's such an on-point, brutal takedown of how Hollywood and corporations can come off so phony, where they clearly are pandering to groups rather than caring about them. And you see that especially in how behind the scenes they don't care about Queen Maeve at all. They just see a story that they can tell to sell more product. And that's the satire that this show just does so well, of using stories to comment on society. And of course, the show continues to be jam-packed with ultra-violence and dark, dark humor. Whether you're talking about a boat crashing through a whale, Stormfront just snapping a guy's hands off casually and then wanting to make memes about it, whether you're talking about a Senate hearing where people's heads just start exploding left and right, or in episode 6 where a bunch of these new soups escape from this place and they're just killing people left and right. It is just filled with the ultra violence that the show promises to deliver, and the humor that it's so wildly inappropriate at times, and that's what kind of makes it so much fun at the same time. In general, it delivered more of what I enjoyed about the first season. We get more interesting, complex, entertaining characters, more satire of popular culture through storytelling, and then all of that ultra violence and dark comedy that I loved. There are a few issues here, so let's move on to the mixed aspects. Big thing that comes to mind here is that I enjoyed the second half of the season a lot more than I enjoyed the first half of the season. For the first 3 episodes, they were kind of introducing new characters, setting up plot lines, letting us know where everyone was at. And because of that, they just kind of felt like we were meandering just a little bit. And then it started to pick up around episode 4, episode 5. And then I thoroughly enjoyed episodes 6, 7, and 8, where it became clear what the season was about. And it tied the whole thing together really well. But like, I watched the first episode when it first debuted, and I didn't feel any urgency to watch the next episode until about a week ago when I realized I needed to binge through 7 episodes so I could do this review. And so in general, most of the positive things I felt about the season came from the last 5 episodes rather than the first 3 episodes. Likewise, the character Stormfront was pretty mixed for me. Now, I really enjoyed kind of the way they slowly rolled out her backstory, and they first introduced her as someone that is this online troll that understands social media in a totally different way than corporate Homelander could understand it, and so kind of eases her in nicely, and then they turn her into another despicable villain that you absolutely hate. But the problem was, as they start unraveling her backstory and these details about her past, there's just like a whole bunch of things about it that seemed like they would have been common knowledge or that there'd be evidence, and like it just didn't hold together by the time that they set the whole story. Like story-wise, I know it needed to be revealed in the way that it was. But then when it's like, oh, she's tied to this person, and this happened before, and there's pictures of this and that, you go, people would have known about that. Your whole thing is that this is a media age where there's information out there. So it just didn't hold together by the time it fully got to the infamy. From there, let's move on to the bad. And the big thing here is what I referenced just a moment ago about not enjoying the first half of the season nearly as much as the second half of the season. And I think the big issue is that the main plot line wasn't really revealed until episode 6. And so for the first 3-4 episodes, you're just kind of playing catch up on where everyone is at. And season 1 was all about getting the boys together and getting Starlight in the 7 and her figuring things out. And so you're being introduced to the world. And so then this season kicks off with trying to like break them up a little bit and having them in different places, introduce a whole bunch of tension into the mix, but it doesn't necessarily introduce the exact goal that we're working towards. There's a lot of plot lines, but there wasn't a clear central plot until episode 6, in which case there's all this conflict without forward momentum. Conflict is good. Conflict is what makes shows interesting, but without forward momentum, without urgency, we're just kind of sitting in the fact that our characters are mad at each other and not getting along and bad things are happening. And so it just kind of took some of the joy out of the show for me until I felt like I knew where we were headed. And what I mean by all of that is that we know that Homelander is a villain, and early on we figure out Stormfront is a villain, but they don't have like specific evil villain plot lines that the boys are trying to stop until we get to the final few episodes. So things are happening, but we're not quite sure why or what we're supposed to be rooting for. So even in the middle of the season where Vought gets outed for what they were doing with Compound V, even kind of the way it's addressed amongst the boys is that Butcher's like, cool, that's a victory. And he doesn't even care all that much about this thing that should be a really big deal. And I think that's tells me of the structuring of the season that they could have found a way to make these feel a little bit more like victories and have us feel a little bit more of what's going on earlier in the season. Because of all of this, when you get to episode 6 and it really starts to come together what the exact plot line is, what the boys are trying to stop, and where the season is headed, it all came together a lot more, and I had a lot more fun with it. Real quick, before I give you my final take on this one, be sure to let me know what you thought down below in the comments section, and how does it compare to season 1 for you? Also, if you've enjoyed this review, I did do a review of season 1 of The Boys. You can check it out right up here once you're done watching this review. Overall, another solid season from The Boys. I just wish they could have introduced a bit more urgency and clarity earlier on in this season. Overall, I'd give this season a B+ on the entertainment scale, an 8 out of 10, and it absolutely is worth streaming, but it is also a very hard R show, so it's not going to be for everyone. If you want to see my review of season 1, you can check it out right there. If you want to see my review of The Haunting of Bly Manor, it's right down there. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too much.